He had been gone for only a few weeks on a routine assignment. But when Alex Ryder came back, I could tell that something about me felt off to him. I was the girl he had taken in years ago, but the way I acted now was completely different. I didn't try to find childish reasons to stay near him anymore, and I stopped faking sickness just so he would stay by my side. I no longer called him by the playful nickname I had once used, a little joke between us that always made him smile and shake his head. Instead, I started calling him Mr. Ryder, a formal title I had always avoided. The vibrant, form fitting clothes I used to wear around the house, hoping to get him to look my way, were gone. Now, I only wore an old, faded school uniform with every button done up and my hair pulled back in a simple, neat ponytail. Alex probably thought it was just because I had recently turned 18. He likely figured I had finally started to mature. What he didn't know, and couldn't possibly guess, was that I had lived this life once before and had been given a second chance. In my first life, I had actually succeeded in marrying Alex Ryder. I was his wife for 50 long years, dedicating my entire existence to him. I cooked his meals, cleaned his house, and waited for him with unwavering patience every time he was deployed. I gave him absolutely everything I had to give, all of my devotion and all of my love. After he passed away, while I was sorting through his private things, I found a photograph hidden away. In the picture, he was standing next to another woman, Isabella Vance. She had a gentle, radiant smile, and her face was filled with a quiet kind of happiness. On the back of the photo, in his familiar handwriting, were the words, "The one I've always loved." For 50 years, my heart had been completely broken. I had spent all those decades believing that I was the person he truly loved, but it turned out that it had always been her. In this new life, I decided I would stop chasing a dream that could never come true, the dream of becoming the woman he wanted. I gave up on the idea of going to a prestigious university and stopped making sacrifices just to get his approval. Instead, I decided I would follow the path my parents had walked before they died, serving as military doctors. I sent my application to the top military medical university because I wanted to be a doctor who made a difference, someone who could help people anywhere without borders. This time, my life would be my own. The day my acceptance letter came in the mail was the same day Alex returned from his latest mission. I walked into the house with a thick envelope clutched tightly in my hand behind my back. In the main hall, I saw Alex and Isabella. They were chatting together while they unpacked several boxes. I stopped where I was, not wanting to disturb them. Isabella's sweet, smooth voice carried through the room. "This silk is for your Aunt Helen," she said. "She told me she wanted something light but warm for the autumn, so I had a tailor make this for her. And these old opera records. I had a colleague help me track them down. Didn't you say your grandfather enjoys traditional music? These should keep him happy." She smiled and then took out a blue plaid tie. With a playful look, she held it up as if she were about to put it around Alex's neck. "I saw this when we were at the mall the other day and bought it for you. I thought it would look handsome on you. We can save it for our wedding." My mind just went blank. It was really happening. They were getting married. I suppose this was how it was always supposed to be. Without my immature demands and emotional fits, Alex was finally able to be with the person he had loved all along. Isabella saw me standing there but pretended she hadn't. She wrapped her arms around Alex's shoulders and asked with a voice full of fake concern, "Didn't you bring a gift back for Chloe? Do you think she'll be angry with her future aunt? She's never seemed to like me very much." Alex sighed, a tired sound. "She's just a kid, still immature. Don't pay any attention to it. She may have grown up in this family, but she's not really one of us. She'll have to move out on her own sooner or later." His words felt like heavy stones dropping into my chest. My fingers started to tremble, and a feeling of numbness spread through my whole body. My parents had served under General Miller as military doctors. During one intense battle, they sacrificed their own lives to shield a young journalist who had foolishly wandered into the war zone. With no other family to take me in, General Miller had adopted me himself. I was only 7 years old at the time. Alex, who was 17 then, used to get down on his knees and pat my head, telling me that this was my home now and that I should always think of him as my family. But now it seemed I had become an outsider. After Alex had said exactly what Isabella wanted to hear, she finally turned her attention to me, acting surprised. "Oh, Chloe, you're home," she said, walking toward me and taking my hand. Her nails dug into my skin, just hard enough to hurt but not enough to leave a mark. "Don't take what Alex said so seriously," she whispered, her voice soft but filled with mockery. "He does care about you. It's just that you really went too far during our last mission at the base. He's still upset about that." In my past life, I had pleaded with Alex to let me come with him on a mission he had promised to take me on. But when it was time to go, he took Isabella instead. I was devastated. In a moment of desperation, I confessed how I felt about him, hoping he might understand. But he just turned cold. He looked me right in the eye and scolded me, calling me shameless. From that point on, he stopped showing me any of the kindness he once had. He no longer indulged my wishes and began to treat me like I was just a weight holding him down. Before they left on that mission, Isabella had even turned to me and said, "Chloe, why do you look so sad? Alex and I are just going on official business." Alex had added coldly, "I know you don't like her, but you need to see the bigger picture. Not everything is about you. Isabella is a military journalist, and her job is to document the mission. If I don't bring her, who am I supposed to bring? You? You need to grow up and stop letting your feelings get in the way of our work." When they returned from that trip, they made their relationship public. That was the moment I finally gave up on him completely. Alex made sure to be openly affectionate with Isabella right in front of me, but this time I didn't run to my room and cry. I didn't sob until my eyes were red and swollen. I didn't throw a tantrum or beg him not to marry her. Instead, I just smiled calmly and asked, "So you two are getting married?" Alex's eyes narrowed and he replied in a cold voice, "What if we are? I'm telling you now, don't even think about causing any problems. Isabella is going to be your aunt from now on, and she will be the future lady of this house. You need to understand where you stand. If you don't, I won't think twice about sending you to live with my grandfather in the capital." Before he could say anything else, I cut him off softly. "Congratulations, Mr. Ryder." Alex froze. I had never once called him that, but now, the name came out of my mouth without any hesitation. For just a second, his confident expression wavered, as if something inside him had been shaken. Isabella noticed the change right away. A hint of annoyance crossed her perfectly composed face, but she quickly masked it and stepped forward with a warm smile. "Chloe, I brought something for you," Isabella said, her voice bright and cheerful. "Alex and I have been getting the house ready for our new life, so we're getting rid of a lot of old things. I thought I'd bring you a little gift, as your future sister-in-law." She set a large box down in front of me. When I looked inside, I saw it was full of old clothes. This wasn't anything new. Isabella had always done this. Any clothes, shoes, or accessories that she didn't want anymore, she would give to me like hand-me-downs. In the past, Alex would at least try to buy me new things sometimes. He used to dress me up like I was a little princess. But now, it seemed I wasn't even worth that small effort. I was only good enough to receive their discarded items. Isabella beamed at me as if she had just done something incredibly generous. "I think of you as family," she said sweetly. "There's no reason to waste money on new things when these are all still perfectly fine." She pulled a beige trench coat out of the box. "I wore this on an interview trip in the mountains. The style is a little old-fashioned and there's a small tear on the hem, but if you sew it up, it will look brand new." Then she held up a navy blue skirt. "This was custom made, one of a kind. It does have a little stain on it, but that's not a big deal, is it? You're just a student, so you don't need to be so particular." Finally, she reached back into the box and took out a tube of lipstick that was half used. She smiled as she set it on top of the pile of clothes. "Alex mentioned that you enjoy makeup. A friend of mine brought this back from another country. I've hardly used it at all. You can have it." Alex glanced at the lipstick and then looked at me, his brow furrowed. "That color wouldn't look good on you," he said quietly. I let out a soft, bitter laugh. People were always saying that Alex and Isabella made a perfect couple, both talented, attractive, and successful. But no matter how many times I heard it, a part of me could never accept it. There was a time when I thought that if I just wore Isabella's old clothes and put on adult makeup, maybe Alex would finally see me differently. Maybe he would see me as something more than a child. But in his eyes, I was always just a cheap copy, a pale imitation of the woman he actually loved. This time, I didn't try to prove anything to them. I smiled naturally and said, "Thank you, Mr. Ryder. Thank you, Isabella. But I'm still a student, and these things aren't really my style. You should hold on to them." It was only then that they seemed to realize how much I had changed. I wasn't wearing oversized high heels or makeup that was too old for me anymore. Instead, I was in my school uniform, the same one I used to complain was too plain and childish. Now, it fit me just right. It felt like a soft layer of armor, protecting what little dignity I had left. Alex looked at me, and his expression softened just a little. "It's good that you're finally acting your age," he said. I took a slow, deep breath and asked, "Is there anything else you need from me, Mr. Ryder, Isabella? If not, I'm a bit tired and would like to go to my room to rest." They had nothing else to say. I turned around and walked away quietly, leaving them standing there together. That evening, Alex and Isabella went out to get fitted for their wedding clothes and to choose a cake. It was late when I saw the headlights of Alex's old military Jeep sweep across my window. I had already eaten dinner by myself and was sitting in my room, packing my belongings into a suitcase. When I looked up, I saw Alex standing in my doorway. I had no idea how long he had been watching me. His gaze fell on the thick envelope on my desk, and his expression shifted slightly. "Is that your acceptance letter from the prestigious university?" he asked, his voice quiet. That university was a dream he had always talked about, a goal he had once wanted me to pursue. It was a name he used to say with such pride, back when he still saw me as someone worth his time and guidance. He always thought that I should go to the best school and get the best education possible. In my previous life, I did everything I could to live up to what he wanted. I studied constantly, pushing myself until I was completely exhausted. I eventually did get in. I followed every single step he had planned for me, thinking that if I just did everything right, maybe he would finally see me. But even then, no matter what I did, I never managed to win his heart. In this life, I had chosen a different road, but I didn't tell him that. Instead, I just nodded and said softly, "Yes, the letter came yesterday." For the first time in what felt like forever, Alex smiled. "You should go to the capital and share the good news with my grandfather," he said. "Isabella and I are very busy with wedding preparations, so we won't have time to watch over you." I gave him a small, quiet nod. All right. The military medical university I had been accepted to started its term much earlier than most other schools. I had been trying to figure out how I could leave without him realizing, but now he was the one telling me to go. I didn't need to make up an excuse anymore. After a moment, Alex asked, "Do you need me to have someone drive you?" I shook my head. "No, that's okay." "Then go to the train station on your own tomorrow," he said. "Isabella and I will be visiting an old commanding officer. One last thing. After the wedding, we're going to turn your room into a nursery. I'll have a guest room set up for you downstairs. Make sure you have all of your things packed before you go." The next morning, Alex was already gone by the time I woke up. I packed the rest of my bags, taking my time. Before I closed my suitcase, I took one final look around the room. In the back of the closet, a few of the old gifts he had given me were still there. A secondhand camera he had spent weeks searching for, and a few small trinkets he had brought back from his missions. He had given them to me thinking they would make me happy. I left them all where they were. On the nightstand, there was still a framed photo of the two of us. I picked it up, ran my fingers over the cool glass, and then set it back down. From now on, they would be a happy family of three. There was no longer any room for me here. I carried my suitcase downstairs. At the front door, I paused and looked back at the house I had lived in for 10 years. Silently in my heart, I said my goodbyes. Goodbye to my past, and goodbye to Alex Ryder. From that day on, our lives would go in completely different directions. I had only been at the university for about a week when Alex appeared. I wasn't surprised. I knew it was bound to happen eventually. His grandfather lived in the capital, but my school was located in the Northwest. The student enrollment lists at the military medical university were shared with the military, and with the Miller family's connections, it was impossible for them not to find out where I was. That afternoon, I was walking to the boiler room with a thermos, hoping to get some hot water. A military jeep drove up and stopped right in front of me. Before I had a chance to walk away, Alex got out and came straight toward me. His face was like a dark storm cloud. "Who gave you permission to apply to the military medical university?" he demanded. "Didn't I tell you to apply to the prestigious university?" Walking right behind him was Isabella Vance. She clung to his arm and spoke in a voice that sounded gentle, but was filled with criticism. "Chloe, you're acting so immaturely. Alex and I went to so much trouble to help you plan your future. If you're angry with us, that's one thing. But how could you be so reckless with your own life?" I looked directly into Alex's eyes. "I'm not being reckless with my future," I said, my voice steady. "This is what I want." But he didn't care about what I wanted. He never had. His voice was hard and cold, the way it always was, as if every word he spoke was an order. "Where's your dorm room? Go pack your things. You're withdrawing from this school. You can take the entrance exams again next year." Those words hit a nerve. They brought back memories from my past life, the long nights spent studying under a dim lamp, all for the slim hope of hearing a single word of praise from him. Hearing those words again, I didn't feel sad anymore, just tired. Then, I saw a security officer heading toward my dormitory. My instincts took over. I moved to stand in the officer's way. For the very first time in my life, I looked Alex Ryder in the eye and said his full name. "Alex Ryder," I said, my voice strong. "What gives you the right to get involved in my life? Are you speaking to me as a stranger, as a guardian in name only, or as the man that I was once foolish enough to love?" The moment the words were out, the atmosphere between us changed. The tension that had been building for so long finally broke. Alex's face grew dark with rage, which he was struggling to control. Then, in a sudden movement, he slapped me hard across the face. The sharp sound echoed in the quiet air. My cheeks stung, but strangely, my mind felt clearer than it ever had before. That slap, I thought, could be considered payment for all the years I had wasted trying to make him love me. He was the one who had raised me, but after that moment, we didn't owe each other a single thing. Alex seemed to realize what he had just done. He looked down at his own hand as if he couldn't believe what it had done. For the first time, he lowered his head and said in a quiet voice, "I'm sorry, Chloe. I was just trying to do what's best for you. Wouldn't it be better for you to go to the top university?" A faint, bitter smile appeared on my lips. "No, it wouldn't," I answered softly, "because I'm Chloe. I have my own dreams, and I want to follow my own path. I'm finished living my life based on what you expect of me." Alex's face hardened with frustration. He scoffed, his voice filled with disbelief. "Expectations? Haven't I always been the one to make your choices for you? What kind of expectations could you possibly have on your own?" And that was it. That was the truth I had been living with for so long. Because everything in my life had always been decided by Alex, I had once thought he was my entire world. I followed him around without question, doing anything and everything I could just to be near him, hoping that one day he would finally see me for who I was. Back then, I believed that if I just kept trying, kept giving him everything, he might eventually turn around and choose me. But now, after leaving the Miller family, enrolling in the military medical university, and seeing a little more of the world, I finally understood. Alex was just one person in a huge world, and I had so many other options besides just becoming Mrs. Ryder. I gave a quiet laugh and looked at him. "So tell me, Alex, in what capacity do you think you have any right to interfere in my life?" His jaw clenched and his face became even more rigid. I took a deep breath and went on. "I've made my choice. If my parents were still here, they would have supported me. I have a future of my own, and I'm going to build it myself. I'll have a career, a life that is truly mine. And maybe, if I'm fortunate, I'll find someone who will walk beside me, not in front of me." My voice softened as I added, "I've grown up, Alex. I'm not that little girl who used to follow you everywhere like a lost puppy. And I am definitely not your puppet. Just then, a group of male students jogged by us, on their way back from morning exercises. Their faces were bright and full of youthful energy, and their uniforms were neat and clean. One of them smiled and waved at me. I saw Alex's expression change. It twisted into something I couldn't quite identify, something like fear or maybe even jealousy. Perhaps for the first time, he was realizing that I wouldn't always be there waiting for him, that one day I would be holding someone else's hand, that I would belong to someone else. I gave him a small smile and said gently, "Mr. Ryder, aren't you getting married soon? Let me be the first to wish you and the woman you truly love a long and happy life together." I paused and looked at him with clear eyes. A wedding requires a lot of planning. You should be concentrating on that, not on someone like me, someone who isn't even related to your family by blood. I paused again before adding, "I heard the wedding is next month. With my schedule at the university, I won't have any free time. I won't be able to attend." Alex didn't say anything. His face had grown even darker, as if he had swallowed a storm. But as it turned out, fate had other ideas. Not long after that, something completely unexpected happened at Alex and Isabella's wedding, and I found myself right in the middle of it. I had only been at the military medical university for a few weeks when a newspaper article suddenly made me the center of a public scandal. On the front page, there was a large, grainy, black and white photograph. In the photo, an elderly man, probably around 60, was on his knees on the ground. His face was twisted in pain as he clutched the hand of a young female military doctor. Me. The headline above the photo screamed, "Elderly man has medical emergency, begs military doctor for help. Cold-hearted soldier refuses." And below that, in small bold letters, was the reporter's name, Isabella Vance. But that wasn't how it had happened at all. Our university had a very strict closed campus rule, meaning students could only leave once a month to get necessary supplies. On that day, I had gone to a department store near the campus. That was where I saw the elderly man. His wife had suddenly collapsed from what turned out to be a cerebral hemorrhage. I was just a first-year student with very little training, and I was not at all qualified to handle that kind of emergency. The only thing I could do was run back to the university to get help. By sheer luck, I ran into one of my professors right outside the campus gates. Because he acted so quickly, we were able to get the elderly woman to the hospital just in time, and her life was saved. The man hadn't been kneeling to beg me for help. He had been kneeling to thank me. He was only on the ground for a few seconds before I helped him back to his feet. But someone, somewhere, had captured that one brief moment and twisted it into a cruel and vicious lie. Isabella Vance had used that image to create a story of heartlessness and neglect, and just like that, I was at the heart of a nationwide controversy. "Chloe, we understand your situation," my instructor told me kindly. "We know your character and that you would never ignore someone who needed help. But the harm from this article has been significant. We've been receiving numerous letters demanding that the university discipline you." The university needed an answer, and they needed one immediately. I took a deep breath and looked at the headline again, my eyes focusing on the name printed beneath it. Then I spoke in a calm voice. "Don't worry, Professor," I said. "I'll handle this." The next time I saw Alex and Isabella was when they came to the Capitol to see General Miller and put the final touches on their wedding plans. I walked directly up to Isabella, my steps even and confident. Without a word, I put the newspaper down on the table in front of her. Next to it, I placed signed statements from the elderly couple and from my professor, statements that proved my innocence completely. Isabella's composure slipped. She froze for a moment, but then quickly arranged her features into a well-practiced smile. "Oh, Chloe," Isabella said sweetly. "I'm so sorry. I honestly didn't know you were the person in that picture. One of my colleagues took the photo, and I was just writing the article based on his notes." I raised my eyebrows and looked at her skeptically. "Even total strangers were able to figure out it was me from that blurry picture," I replied. "And you, someone who actually knows me, want me to believe that you had no idea?" She started to say something, but I didn't let her finish. Is this what your newspaper does now? Prints completely false stories without bothering to check the facts? Do journalists just sit around in their offices and make things up instead of doing actual research? Her face turned red with anger. Do you have any idea who I am? Isabella snapped. Do you know how much respect I have in the world of journalism? And you're just a student, not even graduated yet. How dare you question my work? I let out a quiet, cold laugh and took a step closer to her. I could see a hint of nervousness in her eyes. Alex once told me you were an exceptional woman, I said. He said you were so brilliant that he made me retake my exams over and over, just so I could try to catch up to you. But now I see you for who you really are. You're not remarkable at all. Not only did you tarnish my reputation as a soldier, but you also brought shame to your entire profession as a journalist. She tried to interrupt, but I wouldn't allow it. I'm not some little girl you can push around anymore, I said firmly. Do you even understand what it means to fabricate a story about a soldier? Do you realize how serious it is to create conflict between the military and the public? Her mouth hung open, but I continued. If you don't want to end up in jail, you had better print a retraction and a public apology. Otherwise, you should be prepared to face the consequences. Isabella's eyes widened, and her lips trembled as she whispered, The news cycle moves quickly. This is just a small story. It will be forgotten soon. If I issue a retraction now, it will destroy my career. Just then, Alex, who had been silent the whole time, finally spoke up. His expression was dark and filled with disapproval. For a brief moment, I held onto a sliver of hope that, as a fellow soldier, he would stand up for me, that he would recognize the injustice and support me. But instead, he frowned and said, It wasn't Isabella's fault. She was given bad information by her colleague. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? Isabella has worked incredibly hard to build her career. Are you really going to destroy everything she's worked for over a simple misunderstanding? I felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. Tears burned at the back of my eyes, but I forced myself not to let them fall. I clenched my hands into fists to keep my voice from shaking. And what about me, Alex? I asked. What about my future? I worked so hard to get into the military medical university. This wasn't just my dream, it was my parents' legacy. And now, because of her carelessness, my name has been ruined. Does that mean nothing to you? Alex looked at me for a long time, his face impossible to read. Then he spoke again. Maybe it would be for the best if you just left the military medical university. If you retake the exams next year, you can apply to the prestigious university instead. The words were barely out of his mouth when the sharp sound of a slap echoed through the room. Everyone fell silent. Even I was surprised by what I had just done. A red mark quickly appeared on Alex's cheek where my hand had connected. He stared at me, completely shocked. His brow furrowed as he tried to understand what had just happened. Isabella was the first one to react. She rushed to his side, her voice high and shrill. "Chloe, what do you think you're doing?" she cried. "I know you're upset that I'm marrying Alex, and now that you have something you can use against me, you're trying to crush me. But Alex is your elder. The Miller family took you in and raised you. How could you do this to him?" I let out a low, mocking laugh. "Do I owe the Miller family?" I asked. That debt was paid off a long time ago. In my past life, I gave them 50 years of my loyalty, and in the end, they still threw me away. I took a breath and went on. And don't you forget, it was my parents who saved countless lives on the battlefield, including members of your precious Miller family. General Miller didn't take me in because he was kind. He did it because he felt guilty and grateful. If anyone owes a debt here, it's your family that owes mine. I turned my eyes back to Alex and said, "Isabella, you're wrong. Maybe at one time I did love Alex. But after everything he has said and everything he has done, what I feel for him now isn't love. It's disgust. The same kind of disgust I feel when I look at you." Alex's eyes flickered, and something in his expression tightened. But I kept my voice steady, calm, and certain. 10 years of love and 10 years of bitterness, I said quietly. Let's just call it even, right here, right now. From this day forward, Alex, between you and me, there is nothing left. As I turned to walk away, Alex instinctively reached out and grabbed my arm. He looked like he wanted to say something, maybe to try and explain or even to beg, but I pulled my arm free before he could say a single word. After that, I collected all the necessary evidence and filed a formal complaint with the university. The newspaper's leadership acted quickly. They retracted Isabella's article and published a front-page apology that ran for a full week. Because of the scandal and the damage it did to the military's public image, Isabella faced severe repercussions. Her press credentials were taken away and her career was left in ruins. When General Miller heard the whole story, he was furious. He strongly opposed Alex and Isabella's wedding. I heard later that on the day I had left the Miller house for good, General Miller had returned from a trip and found out what had happened. Without a word, he had taken off his belt and beaten Alex until he was covered in bruises. After that day, any connection that remained between Alex and me was completely gone. A year went by, and then war broke out. Alex was severely injured in battle. As the fighting on the front lines grew more intense, students from the Military Medical University were called up to serve in field hospitals. We weren't trained enough for major surgeries yet, but we could help by dressing wounds, cleaning injuries, and stabilizing patients. News spread fast through the medical tents. I overheard one soldier whispering to another, "I heard General Ryder lost a leg in an explosion. They couldn't stop the bleeding in time." A few of my classmates who knew about my past with the Miller family came over to me hesitantly. "Chloe," one of them said softly, "do you want to go and see General Ryder?" Without looking up from the soldier's arm I was bandaging, I kept my expression calm and neutral. "That's the critical care unit. We're not allowed in there. We couldn't do anything to help anyway." In my previous life, when I heard that Alex had gone to war, I had acted without thinking. I was still just a university student, impulsive and emotional. I had followed him to the battlefield, desperate just to see him, but then a grenade went off nearby. The explosion was deafening, and for a long time afterward, I couldn't hear anything. Alex had blamed himself for my injury, and under pressure from General Miller, he had been forced to marry me. Isabella, after waiting for him for so many years with no commitment, finally gave up. She left the country and married someone else. Back then, I honestly believed that if I just got out of the way in this new life, if I let go of my own selfish desires, Alex would find happiness with the woman he truly loved, his perfect Isabella. But after all the twists and turns, this was the life he had ended up with. I saw him again 2 months later. His condition was stable and he had been moved to a regular hospital room to recover. But his left leg was gone, amputated below the knee. He would never be a soldier again. The loss broke him completely. He took his anger out on everyone around him. The nurses tried to avoid his room, and even the cleaning staff tiptoed past his door, afraid of setting off his temper. No one dared to leave anything within his reach, and no one stayed in his room for longer than they absolutely had to. Then, one day, it was my turn for his ward. I walked into his room without a sound. The moment he saw me, Alex froze. His face turned pale, and his lips moved as if he wanted to speak, but nothing came out. I showed no reaction. I simply did my job, checking his temperature, changing his dressings, and cleaning his wounds. My hands were steady and professional, moving with a calm efficiency. When I was finished, I turned to go without a word. "Chloe," he said suddenly, his voice rough. I stopped. Behind my surgical mask, only my eyes were visible and they were cold. I turned and looked at him. He let out a soft, bitter laugh. "You've changed so much." He was right. I had changed. Since I started at the Military Medical University, since I chose to follow the same path my parents had, I had started to discover who I really was. Every day, I dealt with blood, pain, and death. I had crawled through the ruins of buildings, treated broken bodies, and learned how to remain calm in the middle of chaos. I was no longer the girl who used to hide behind him, the girl whose entire world was about love and longing. That version of me was gone forever. I looked at him steadily. "Do you need anything else?" I asked. "I have other patients to see." His voice was low and shaky. "Chloe, do you still refuse to forgive me?" He was wrong. In the world of adults, forgiveness wasn't really the issue. I had simply grown up. I had seen too much and learned too much. I understood things now in a way I never could have before. But there was still one thing that bothered me. In my past life, the war had never been this devastating. Something was different this time. Something had gone terribly wrong. The answer came not long after. The military issued an official report revealing the truth about the war. Our army had suffered catastrophic losses. There had been rumors, but the reality was worse than anyone had imagined. Someone had leaked top-secret military intelligence to the enemy, and on the list of confirmed traitors was Isabella Vance, along with several of her close colleagues. Suddenly, it all made sense. Isabella had used her job as a journalist to get inside the Miller family, to get close to Alex, and to steal sensitive military secrets. In my previous life, I had always been suspicious of her. I had kept her at a distance, watched her constantly, and made it hard for her to ever get too close to Alex. That must have interfered with her plans. And after I came back from the front lines, Alex, under pressure from his superiors and with no other choice, had been forced to marry me. That had effectively cut Isabella off from her mission entirely. So, she hadn't left the country because she was heartbroken. She had fled to avoid being discovered. And the most painful part of it all was this. Alex had spent his entire life mourning for her. He had treasured her memory and had even written a book to honor her. But he never knew that the woman he loved more than anyone had been the one who had betrayed him and his country. When Alex saw the list of traitors, he was stunned into silence. Then, a deep, animal-like scream tore from his throat. He tried to push himself up in bed, his eyes blazing with fury. Even with only one leg, he tried to move. He wanted to find her, to confront her, to demand to know why. But his body wouldn't cooperate, and he fell from the bed onto the cold, hard floor, completely helpless. His voice cracked as he cried out, "That woman! Why? Why would she do this?" Then he looked up at me, his eyes wide with a horrifying realization. "Chloe, she got the information from me, didn't she? That's why we lost so many men. That's why they all died, isn't it?" The room descended into chaos. Doctors and nurses rushed in to help him, trying to hold him down as he thrashed around screaming. In the end, his voice shaking, he clung to me, his hands trembling. "Tell me, Chloe. Tell me I wasn't that much of a fool. How could I have been so blind?" But it didn't matter how many tears he cried or how loudly he begged. The past couldn't be changed. I looked down at him, at the broken man on the floor, and my mind went back to the Alex of my past life, the one who had spent 50 years grieving for the woman he thought was the love of his life. I remembered the words he had written on the back of that old photograph. "The one I've always loved." If he had known the truth back then, would he still have wasted his entire life mourning a lie? Isabella was arrested. Alex, because of his role in leaking military intelligence, was dishonorably discharged. He became the subject of a formal investigation. His military career was finished, and he had nothing left to look forward to. The war continued for another 6 months before it finally came to an end. My classmates and I returned from the front lines to continue our studies. The future was still uncertain, but the time we had spent on the battlefield, the lives we had saved, and the pain we had seen would be a part of us forever. On the day we were officially released from the field hospital in front of everyone, my boyfriend Liam proposed to me. Liam and I had met at the Military Medical University. We weren't just classmates, we were partners. We had the same goals, the same belief in the importance of healing, and the same deep desire to save lives. We had dedicated our youth to this work, and one day we would dedicate the rest of our lives to it. There were no roses or fancy rings, just a small bouquet of daisies that Liam had picked from the side of the road. But in a place that was still covered in dust and debris, those simple little flowers meant more than anything. They were a symbol of hope, of resilience, of beauty surviving in the middle of so much destruction. As Liam knelt on one knee, his voice was calm and full of emotion. "Chloe, will you marry me?" he asked. "I will spend the rest of my life making you happy. I will walk this path with you all the way to the end." Tears welled up in my eyes, and for a second, my thoughts drifted back to the girl I used to be. the girl who had chased after Alex Rider with every fiber of her being. Back then, Alex had always been just beyond my grasp. No matter how hard I tried, I could only ever see his back as he walked away from me. In his eyes, I was always just the little girl who clung to him, the housekeeper who tidied up his messes, never someone he could respect or love as an equal. But now, I didn't have to make myself small anymore. I didn't have to beg for someone's affection. I didn't need to wear someone else's old clothes or put on makeup just to feel seen. I was no longer the girl who was trying to be someone else. I was finally myself. I threw my arms around Liam's neck and cried, letting out all the years of pain, heartbreak, and sacrifice. Everything had led me to this moment, a moment that was simple and absolutely perfect. Cheers went up all around us, and the sound of congratulations echoed through the hospital corridors. I was certain that Alex must have heard it too, from his room down the hall. If he had looked out his window, he would have seen me in Liam's arms, holding on to the man who had always stood by my side. That afternoon, I went to change Alex's bandages for the last time. He sat silently while I worked, not saying a single word. I packed up my medical supplies and was about to leave, but just as I reached the door, I heard his voice. "Congratulations," Alex said quietly. It was the same word I had said to him and Isabella all those years ago. Liam and I decided to get married right away. Before the ceremony, we took a special trip to the capital to visit General Miller. My parents were gone, and even though he was only my guardian by title, he was the closest thing I had to a real family. It felt important to tell him about our plans in person. That evening, after we had dinner, General Miller asked me to join him in his study. His hands were trembling slightly as he picked up a small, worn metal box and carefully placed it on the desk in front of me. "These belong to your parents," General Miller said, his voice low and heavy. "You were too young at the time. I was afraid that giving them to you would only cause you more pain, so I kept them safe. But you're a grown woman now. You're about to start your own family. It's time that you had them." I slowly lifted the lid. Inside, there were photographs of my biological parents, their official identification papers, and an old yellowed newspaper clipping. As I ran my fingertips over the faded words, a strange feeling of unease washed over me. Something about the article felt disturbingly familiar. Driven by a feeling I couldn't quite explain, I started to do some research. The more I looked into it, the clearer the truth became. The journalist whose reckless behavior had led to my parents' deaths on the battlefield was Isabella Vance. Back then, she had just graduated from university and was only an intern at a small newspaper, desperate to make a name for herself. She had ignored every warning and crossed into a restricted combat zone. She pushed her way past the safety lines, determined to get the perfect photograph from the front lines. Her actions set off a tragic series of events. Because she was still a student, the military had covered up her involvement to avoid a bigger scandal. Her record was wiped clean. She graduated with honors, her terrible mistake buried and forgotten. From there, she climbed the ladder of the media world, using her words to shape stories and build her own legacy. No one ever knew the truth that had been hidden beneath all of her success. When I told General Miller what I had discovered, his face grew dark with disgust. He clenched his jaw and said quietly, "No wonder I never liked her from the moment I met her. There was always something about her that didn't feel right. Alex, that boy was a fool to be so completely blinded by her." The military eventually finished its investigation. Although Alex was found guilty of unintentionally leaking classified information, his past achievements in combat were taken into consideration. His previous merits reduced his sentence. He avoided prison time, but he could not escape the disgrace. His military rank, his title, and his future, everything was taken from him. For a man like Alex Rider, it was a punishment far worse than death. He withdrew from the world completely, hardly ever leaving his room, hiding like a ghost in his own house. On the day of my wedding to Liam, Alex finally made an appearance. He stood off in the distance, leaning on a steel cane, just watching from afar. Slowly, one step at a time, he made his way toward me. When he finally reached me, he held out a small box. Inside was a bracelet. I knew it instantly. It was his mother's bracelet, the Miller family heirloom. In my past life, even after 50 years of devotion and care, he had never given it to me. I had always known that it was meant for Isabella, and now, of all times, he was trying to give it to me. His hair had turned completely gray, and his eyes were bloodshot. The once handsome face that had charmed so many people had aged far beyond his years. Yet, as he looked at me, there was a softness in his eyes, a kind of clarity I had never seen there before. I gently pushed the bracelet back into his hand. "Mr. Ryder," I said softly, "as I understand it, this bracelet is a Miller family heirloom. It's supposed to be for your future daughter-in-law. Today is my wedding day. I'm marrying Liam. It wouldn't be right for you to give this to me." The light in his eyes dimmed. A quiet, bitter smile touched his lips. He nodded slowly and murmured, "You're right." Before the reception was even over, Alex was gone. Not long after that, I heard that he had died. He had taken his own life. In this lifetime, he never became the respected general who spent his final years reminiscing about a lost love. Instead, he became a man blinded by his own pride and lies, a man who had betrayed the very people who trusted him the most. His name, once spoken with praise, became a source of shame. He spent his last days consumed by guilt and regret, unable to bear the weight of his own mistakes. As for me, I continued down the path I had chosen, with Liam right by my side. I walked forward with a clear purpose. My life was no longer defined by the wreckage of the past. It would be dedicated to something bigger, something that would last. Not a temporary love built on a fantasy, but a life built on truth, on choice, and on a quiet, steady strength.